The rain hammered against the windows of the Anchor Bar in Virginia Beach, each drop a sharp staccato against the glass. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke, cheap beer, and the kind of silence that only exists between men who've seen too much. Lieutenant Commander Jake, Reaper, Morrison sat at the bar's far corner, his callous fingers tracing the rim of his whiskey glass. The amber liquid inside caught the dim overhead lights, casting shadows across his weathered face. It had been 6 years since Kandahar. 6 years since the mission that changed everything. 6 years since he'd heard her voice crackling through his comms, calm and precise even as hell rained down around them. Reaper, you've got 3 tangos on your 6. 200 meters and closing. I'm adjusting your extract route now. He could still hear it. That voice, steady as a heartbeat when his own was racing out of control. She'd been their guardian angel, their unseen protector operating from a forward position that should have been impossible to hold. While the rest of the team engaged the enemy, she'd been their eyes, their edge, their reason they all made it home. All except her. Jake raised his glass and drank deep, welcoming the burn. Across the bar, he spotted them. 3 more from the old team. Davis, Martinez, and Tiny Thompson, who at 6'5" and 250 pounds had earned his nickname through pure irony. They were gathered around a corner booth, and Jake could see it even from here. The fresh ink on Davis's forearm, stark black lines against sun-damaged skin. The call sign, Valkyrie. Jake rolled up his own sleeve, revealing the same tattoo on his right forearm. The letters were bold, unmistakable, a permanent reminder of the woman who'd saved his life more times than he could count. It wasn't grief that drove him to get it 2 months ago. It was something else. Something he couldn't quite name but felt in his bones every time he woke from dreams where he heard her voice, still calling out coordinates, still keeping them alive. Another round, Reaper? The bartender, an ex-Marine named Collins, gestured his empty glass. Yeah, make it a double. Collins poured with the efficiency of a man who'd served thousands of drinks to thousands of broken warriors. Saw your ink last week. That's the 4th one I've seen this month. All the same name. You guys starting a club? Jake's jaw tightened. Something like that. The door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cold air and rain. Commander Richard Bull Patterson stepped inside, his imposing frame filling the doorway. At 52, Bull was a legend in the teams, a man who'd survived 3 decades of combat operations and still moved like a predator. His eyes swept the room with practiced precision before landing on Jake. Bull approached the bar, water dripping from his jacket. Reaper, we need to talk. About what? About why 8 of my men have gotten the same tattoo in the last 4 months. Bull's voice was low, controlled, but Jake heard the edge beneath it. About why Lieutenant Chin came to me yesterday asking permission to access classified mission files from Operation Phantom Shield. About why nobody seems to want to accept that she's gone. Jake met his gaze steadily. You don't believe she's dead either, do you, sir? Bull was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out a stool and sat down heavily. Collins, whiskey. Neat. He waited until the bartender moved away before continuing. What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is that you and the others are chasing ghosts instead of moving forward. She was the best intelligence operator I ever worked with. But she's been classified as Kia for 6 years. No body. Sure, but that cave system was hit with bunker busters. Nothing could have survived. Then why wasn't there a body? Jake's voice was harder than he intended. Why wasn't there any remains at all? We found pieces of the enemy combatants. We found equipment, weapons, even dental fragments. But nothing of her. Not a trace. Bull accepted his whiskey from Collins and took a long drink. You know how these things work. The blast could have... Don't. Jake cut him off. Don't give me the official line. I've read the reports. Hell, I wrote half of them. Something about that mission never sat right, and you know it. The rain intensified outside, creating a wall of white noise that isolated them from the rest of the bar. Bull studied Jake's face, weighing something internal. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. 3 months ago, there was an operation in Syria. Black Op, Off the books, coalition special forces trying to extract a high-value target from an ISIS stronghold. It went sideways. Intel was compromised, and the team walked into an ambush. They should have been massacred. Bull paused, his fingers tight around his glass. But someone intervened. Sniper support from an impossible position. Communications intercepts that gave them enemy movements in real time, and an escape route that appeared out of nowhere. The team made it out with 0 casualties. Jake's pulse quickened, and when they debriefed, one of the British SAS operators swore he heard a voice on an encrypted channel, an American woman. She gave him coordinates for the extract and then went silent. When they tried to trace the signal, it dead-ended at a ghost server in Eastern Europe. Bull leaned closer. The call sign she used was one word: Valkyrie. The bar seemed to fade away. Jake's mind raced, connecting dots that had been scattered across 6 years of questions and doubts. Why wasn't this reported? It was to a very small, very classified group, the kind that doesn't want attention drawn to operations that never officially happened. Bull finished his whiskey. But I have friends in that group, friends who owe me favors. They told me because they knew our history with her, and they want to know if we had any idea who this person might be. What did you tell them? That it was impossible. That Valkyrie died in Afghanistan in 2019. That they were chasing shadows. Bull stood, his expression grave. But Jake, between you and me, I've been in this business long enough to know that impossible is just another word for classified. If she's out there, if she survived somehow, then she didn't vanish by accident. She disappeared because someone wanted her to disappear, or because she wanted to disappear herself. Jake's mind was spinning, but one question cut through the chaos. Why are you telling me this? Bull pulled on his jacket, preparing to face the rain again. Because in 2 weeks, there's a Joint Forces Conference in D.C. Representatives from every Allied Special Operations Command will be there, including the SAS operator who heard that voice in Syria. His name is Captain James Blackwood, and he'll be at the Grand Hyatt. Bull turned toward the door, then paused. If someone wanted to ask him questions off the record, that might be possible. But it would have to be someone careful, someone who understood discretion. Sir, I never told you any of this, Reaper. And if anyone asks, I came here tonight to tell you and the others to move on with your lives. Am I clear? Crystal, sir. Bull nodded once and walked out into the rain, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts and the possibility that burned brighter than any whiskey burn. He looked down at the tattoo on his forearm, at the name that had haunted him for 6 years. Valkyrie. If she was alive, if she was still out there somewhere, then every mission he'd run since Kandahar had been running on borrowed time. Because Sarah Valkyrie Chun had saved his life 7 times before she disappeared. And if she needed saving now, he'd tear through heaven and hell to return the favor. Jake rolled down his sleeve and caught Collins's attention. Call Davis, Martinez, and Tiny over here, and get us a private booth. We got some planning to do. The bartender raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. That was the thing about places like the Anchor Bar. Nobody asked questions anyone answered. As Jake waited for his teammates, he pulled out his phone and opened an encrypted message app. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he typed out 5 words that would change everything. She might still be alive. He hit send and watched the message disappear into the digital void. Within seconds, responses began flooding in from SEALs scattered across the country. Men who'd served with Valkyrie, men who'd gotten the same tattoo, men who'd never stopped believing. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. But inside the Anchor Bar, something else was beginning to stir. Not grief, not closure, but the kind of determination that only comes from warriors who've lost on their own and refuse to accept it. The 3 men arrived at Jake's booth within minutes, sliding into the worn leather seats with the unconscious coordination of operators who'd worked together for years. Martinez spoke first, his dark eyes intense. Your message. You have proof. Jake glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. The jukebox in the corner was playing something by Johnny Cash, the volume just loud enough to mask their conversation. Bull just gave me intel. 3 months ago, Syria. Coalition team in trouble, mysterious intervention. American woman on comms using the call sign Valkyrie. Christ, Davis breathed. His hands were shaking slightly, whether from adrenaline or emotion. Jake couldn't tell. After all this time, where is she? Unknown. The signal was traced to Eastern Europe before it went dark. But there's more. Bull thinks this wasn't an isolated incident. If she's been operating in the shadows for 6 years, there could be other interventions we don't know about. Tiny leaned forward, his massive frame making the booth creak. Why disappear? If she survived Kandahar, why not come home? That's what we need to find out. Jake pulled out a small notebook, flipping to a page covered in his tight handwriting. I've been going over Operation Phantom Shield for months. Every detail, every decision, every piece of intelligence. The more I look at it, the less sense it makes. The target was supposed to be a high-value Taliban commander, but the intel was thin. The location was wrong. The enemy response was too coordinated. Martinez's expression darkened. You think we were set up? I think Valkyrie figured something out, something that made her too dangerous to let live. Jake met each of their eyes in turn. The bunker busters that hit that cave system, they came in fast, no warning, no confirmation of enemy presence. Standard protocol is to verify the target before dropping that kind of ordnance. But they fired anyway. You're saying someone tried to kill her, Davis said slowly. Someone on our side. I'm saying the pieces don't fit the official story. And if Valkyrie's been hiding for 6 years, she had a damn good reason. Jake closed the notebook. Bull gave me a lead. Captain James Blackwood, British SAS, will be at the Grand Hyatt in 2 weeks. He's the operator who heard her voice in Syria. We need to talk to him. Dangerous. Tiny observed. If someone wanted her dead once, they might still want her dead. And anyone looking for her becomes a target too. I know. That's why this stays between us. No digital communications unless they're encrypted. No discussing this at work or at home. We meet here or nowhere. Jake's voice hardened. But we're doing this. Valkyrie saved every one of us. She pulled my ass out of that ambush in Helmand. She talked Martinez through defusing that IED when EOD was 30 minutes out. She coordinated Tiny's medical evac when he took shrapnel. We owe her. More than that, Martinez said quietly, she was family. You don't leave family behind. The weight of that truth settled over them. In the teams, family wasn't just about blood. It was about the people who'd seen you at your worst and still had your back. The people who'd risk everything to bring you home. Sarah Chun had been that for all of them, and they'd failed her by accepting her death without question. Davis pulled out his phone, his fingers flying over the screen. I can get Blackwood's schedule. I know a guy in conference security. If we're careful, we can arrange a meeting that looks accidental. Do it, Jake confirmed. But be subtle. If anyone's monitoring Valkyrie's old team, they'll be watching for exactly this kind of activity. What about the others? Tiny asked. There are at least a dozen guys who serve with her. They all have the tattoo now. They deserve to know. Jake considered this. The more people involved, the greater the risk of exposure. But Tiny was right. If they were going to do this, they'd need all the help they could get. We bring them in slowly, one at a time, in person, no electronic trail. But only the ones we absolutely trust. This can't turn into a circus. Agreed, Martinez said. I'll reach out to Ramirez and Chun. They were on that last mission with us. They have as much reason to want answers as we do. The 4 men sat in silence for a moment, each processing the magnitude of what they were about to undertake. They were committing to a path that could end their careers, destroy their reputations, or worse. But none of them hesitated. The bond forged in combat was stronger than steel, and Sarah Chun had earned their loyalty 100 times over. Jake raised his glass. To Valkyrie, wherever she is, whatever she's doing, she's not alone anymore. The others raised their drinks in unison. To Valkyrie, they drank, and in that moment, something shifted. The hunt had begun. Across the country, in bases and civilian homes, other men with the same tattoo would soon receive the same message. The ghost they'd mourned wasn't dead, and they were going to find her, no matter what it took. Outside the Anchor Bar, the rain finally began to ease, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. The city slept, unaware that in a dingy bar frequented by warriors, a mission had just been born. Not an official operation with orders and oversight, but something more primal. A rescue. A reckoning. Jake looked at his tattoo one more time before rolling down his sleeve. The letters seemed to pulse with renewed meaning. For 6 years, it had been a memorial. Now it was a promise. They were coming for her. And heaven help anyone who stood in their way. The Grand Hyatt rose like a monument against the December sky, its glass facade reflecting the gray clouds that hung over Washington, D.C. Jake Morrison stood in the lobby, surrounded by the controlled chaos of a military conference in full swing. Officers in dress uniforms moved between meeting rooms, their conversations a low murmur of tactical jargon and bureaucratic posturing. To any observer, Jake was just another attendee, his civilian clothes and visitor badge marking him as unremarkable. But his attention was laser-focused on the man standing near the registration desk. Captain James Blackwood looked exactly as Bull had described, lean, sharp-featured, with the bearing of a career special operator. His British accent carried clearly as he spoke with 2 American officers, discussing joint training exercises with the easy confidence of someone who'd operated in the world's most dangerous places. Jake had been tracking his movements for 2 days, waiting for the right moment to make contact without drawing attention. Martinez materialized at Jake's elbow, holding 2 coffee cups. He's scheduled for a break in 10 minutes. There's a quiet lounge on the 3rd floor. I've already checked it. Only 2 exits, easy to monitor, and it's usually empty this time of day. Good work. Jake accepted the coffee, using it as cover to scan the room. No obvious surveillance, but that meant little. If someone was watching Blackwood, or watching them watch Blackwood, they'd be professionals. Davis in position? 3rd floor, reading a newspaper. He'll signal if anyone takes an unusual interest in our conversation. The next 10 minutes stretched like hours. Jake forced himself to appear relaxed, checking his phone, making small talk with passing officers, playing the role of a contractor attending industry panels. But his mind was racing through contingencies, rehearsing questions, calculating risks. Finally, Blackwood excused himself from his conversation and headed toward the elevators. Jake and Martinez followed at a discreet distance, entering a different car and arriving on the 3rd floor 30 seconds after their target. They found him in the lounge, as predicted, settling into a leather chair with a tablet and what looked like after-action reports. Jake approached directly, deciding that subtlety would only waste time. Captain Blackwood? Jake Morrison. I was hoping we could talk about Syria. Blackwood looked up, his eyes immediately sharp and assessing. For a moment, Jake thought he'd miscalculated, that the SAS operator would shut down or call security. But then Blackwood glanced at Jake's forearm, where the edge of his tattoo was just visible beneath his roll sleeve, and something shifted in his expression. The lounge is closing for maintenance in 5 minutes, Blackwood said, his voice carefully neutral. I was just about to relocate to the coffee shop across the street. More privacy there. Jake understood immediately. Blackwood had been expecting contact, or at least wasn't surprised by it. They left the hotel separately, reconvening at a small cafe that catered to the lunch crowd, but was nearly empty at mid-morning. Davis followed at a distance, taking a table near the door where he could watch for surveillance. Once they were seated in a back corner booth, Blackwood spoke first. You're one of hers. The tattoo, the way you move, the fact that you knew to find me here. How many of you are looking? Enough, Jake said carefully. We heard about the intervention in Syria, about the voice on the encrypted channel. I've given 3 debriefs on that operation. Each time, I was told it was likely a technical glitch or misidentification. Blackwood's jaw tightened. But I know what I heard. And more importantly, I know what happened. My team was 30 seconds from being overrun when she started feeding us intel. Sniper positions we couldn't possibly have spotted. Enemy patrol routes that weren't on any map. She saved 8 lives that night. Martinez leaned forward. Tell us everything. Every detail you remember. Blackwood was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "We've been in country for 6 days, tracking an ISIS cell leader. The intel said he was holed up in a compound in eastern Syria, minimal security. Should have been a straightforward capture or kill. But when we moved in, it was an ambush. They were waiting for us. Heavy weapons, coordinated fire, everything positioned to create a kill zone. Your intelligence was compromised," Jake said. It wasn't a question, obviously. But in the moment, we were too busy staying alive to analyze how they knew we were coming. We were pinned down, taking casualties, and our comms were jammed. That's when she came through on a frequency we weren't even monitoring. My radio operator almost missed it, just a whisper of static on an encrypted channel that should have been empty. What did she say? She identified herself as Valkyrie and asked if we needed assistance. My lieutenant thought it was a trap, but I'd heard rumors. Stories about interventions in Afghanistan, a ghost operator who appeared when teams were in trouble. So I responded, and she... Blackwood shook his head, still clearly amazed. She took control of the situation like she'd been planning for it, gave us firing solutions that decimated their heavy weapons positions, told us exactly when to move and where. There was a drainage tunnel 50 meters from our position that she guided us to. It wasn't on any map, but it led straight through their perimeter. How did she know it was there? Martinez asked. That's what kept me awake for weeks afterward. The only way she could have known was if she'd physically scouted that location beforehand, which means she knew we'd be walking into an ambush and positioned herself to intervene. Blackwood's expression was grim. Whoever she is now, she's not just reacting to crises. She's predicting them. Jake felt cold certainty settling in his gut, because she knows how the traps are set. She understands a pattern. What pattern? Jake exchanged glances with Martinez, making a split-second decision about how much to reveal. 6 years ago, our team ran an operation in Afghanistan, Operation Phantom Shield. The intel was perfect, too perfect. We walked into a prepared ambush that should have killed all of us. But our intelligence operator saw it coming and positioned herself to guide us out. After we extracted, the command dropped bunker busters on her position. The official story is that she died in the blast, but we never found a body. Blackwood absorbed this, his tactical mind clearly connecting implications. You think someone tried to kill her for discovering the intelligence was compromised. We think she discovered something bigger than just compromised intel on one mission. And we think she's been operating in the shadows ever since, protecting other teams from the same fate. Christ. Blackwood ran a hand through his hair. How many interventions are we talking about? We don't know. Syria is the only one we've confirmed. But if she's been doing this for 6 years... Jake left the sentence unfinished. The implications were staggering. Blackwood pulled out his phone, scrolling through what appeared to be encrypted notes. After Syria, I started keeping records. Anomalies in special operations missions. Times when teams reported unexplained support or intelligence that saved them from disaster. I couldn't prove anything, but I tagged 17 incidents in the past 5 years that matched a similar pattern. 17, Martinez breathed. She's been protecting operators across multiple countries for years, and nobody noticed? Oh, people noticed. But anomalies get written off as luck or classified interventions or sensor glitches. Nobody wants to believe in ghosts, especially ghosts that operate better than our most advanced intelligence systems. Blackwood met Jake's eyes. But you gentlemen already know she's real. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Find her, Jake said simply. Bring her home if she wants to come. Or at least make sure she knows she's not alone. And if she doesn't want to be found, if she's staying hidden for a reason, then we make sure nobody else is hunting her. Because if someone tried to kill her once, they might try again. Jake's voice hardened. We protect our own. That doesn't stop just because they're ghosts. Blackwood studied them both for a long moment, then made a decision. I have something you should see. After Syria, our tech team recovered equipment from the site where she'd been operating. Most of it was standard military issue, but there was one piece that didn't match anything in our inventory or yours. He pulled up a photo on his phone, a compact radio transmitter, clearly military grade, but with custom modifications. This encryption package is more sophisticated than anything I've seen. Our analyst spent 2 months trying to crack it and got nowhere. But there was a serial number, and when we traced it, we found something interesting.
What?
It was part of a batch purchased by a DoD black budget program 3 years ago. A program called Sentinel. Supposedly it's a counterterrorism coordination initiative. But the details are so classified that even my command's liaison couldn't get clearance information. Jake felt pieces clicking into place. Sentinel, do you have any other information about it? Only rumors. Supposedly it coordinates high-value target operations across allied forces. But here's what's interesting. Every operation that Sentinel has been connected to has had problems. Intelligence failures, compromised security, casualties. The success rate is abysmal. Unless the point isn't success, Martinez said slowly. Unless someone's using it to feed operations to our enemies. The 3 men sat in heavy silence, the implications spreading like poison. If Martinez was right, if Sentinel was deliberately sabotaging special operations, then Sarah hadn't just discovered a single corrupt intelligence report. She discovered a systemic betrayal that reached into the highest levels of military command. Valkyrie must have figured it out, Jake said. That's why she disappeared. She's been countering Sentinel's sabotage one operation at a time. One woman versus an entire program? Blackwood shook his head. Those are suicide odds. Not if you're Sarah Chun. She was the best intelligence analyst in the teams. If anyone could survive and operate independently against that kind of threat, it's her. Jake pulled out his phone. Captain, we need everything you have on Sentinel. Every rumor, every connection, every operation it's touched. I'll send you what I can through secure channels. But gentlemen, a word of warning. If you're right about this, you're not just looking for your friend. You're hunting whoever set up Sentinel, and they have resources you can't imagine. They tried to kill her once. They won't hesitate to do the same to you. Let them try, Martinez said quietly. We've been in tough spots before. Blackwood stood, preparing to leave. One more thing. The signal from Syria traced back to a server in Prague before going dark. It's a cold trail, but it's the only geographical lead we have. If you're serious about finding her, that's where I'd start. He left cash for his coffee and walked out, leaving Jake and Martinez in the small cafe with more questions than answers. Davis approached from his observation post near the door. Any problems? No surveillance that I could detect. But we need to assume we're exposed now. If someone's monitoring communications about Valkyrie, Blackwood's inquiries might have trigger flags. Davis sat down heavily. I did some digging of my own. Called in favors. Accessed some databases I probably shouldn't have. There are 43 special operations personnel across 5 countries who've gotten tattoos with the name Valkyrie in the past 18 months. That's not grief. That's a movement. Good, Jake said, because we're going to need all of them. If Sentinel is real, if someone's been systematically betraying our operations, then this is bigger than finding one woman. This is about exposing a conspiracy that's gotten God knows how many operators killed. Where do we start? Martinez asked. Jake thought about the serial number, about Prague, about the pattern of intervention spread across years and continents. We follow the evidence. Davis, you keep digging into Sentinel. Find out who runs it, how it's funded, what operations it's touched. Martinez, start reaching out to the others, carefully. We need to know if anyone else has seen signs of Valkyrie's interventions. And he paused, making a decision that would change everything. I'm going to Prague. You can't go alone, Martinez protested. I won't, but it needs to be a small team. Low profile. We go in as tourists, we follow Blackwood's lead, and we see what breadcrumbs Valkyrie might have left behind. Jake met his friend's eyes. This is it. This is when we decide if we're serious about finding her. Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Careers could end. We could be prosecuted. Hell, we could end up like her, hiding in the shadows, fighting a war nobody knows about. Davis spoke first. I'm in. She saved my life in Helmand Province. I owe her everything. Same, Martinez agreed. Besides, if somebody's been getting our people killed, they need to answer for it. with or without official channels. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders. Not official command. No one had appointed him to lead this. But these men were following him anyway, trusting him to bring them through whatever came next, just like Sarah had guided them through Kandahar. All right, we move carefully, we stay smart, and we watch each other's backs. Valkyrie spent 6 years alone in the dark. That ends now. They left the cafe separately, disappearing into the D.C. crowds like ghosts themselves. And somewhere in a city far away, a woman who'd been dead for 6 years continued her solitary war. But she wasn't alone anymore. Her brothers were coming, and heaven help anyone who stood between them. Prague in winter was a city of muted colors and sharp edges, where medieval architecture met modern surveillance in an uneasy dance. Jake Morrison stood on the Charles Bridge at dawn, watching fog roll off the Vltava River and swallow the city in layers of gray. The bridge's Baroque statues loomed like sentinels, their stone faces eroded by centuries of weather and war. It was a kind of place where ghosts felt natural, where the past never quite released its grip on the present. Beside him, Chin shifted position, his young face tight with focus. At 28, Tommy Chun was the newest member of their team, but his skills and signals intelligence had made him invaluable. The cafe is 3 blocks northeast. Building's been abandoned for 18 months, but the property records show it changed ownership 6 times in the past 3 years. Shell companies, all of them. Someone's laundering the trail, Martinez observed, studying his phone's encrypted display. You don't use that many cutouts unless you're hiding something serious. Jake checked his watch. They'd been in Prague for 48 hours, moving carefully through the city's labyrinth of streets and secrets. The IP address Blackwood had traced led to a small cafe in Old Town called the Alchemist's Rest, a name Jake found grimly appropriate. If Valkyrie had been here, she'd been transmuting herself from living operator to digital ghost. What about surveillance? Jake asked. The Czech authorities have cameras on main thoroughfares, but that neighborhood is a blind spot. Too old, too many narrow alleys, too expensive to wire. Chun pulled up a satellite image. However, there's a problem. We're not the only ones interested in that cafe. He zoomed in on a black van parked 2 blocks from the target location. Even in the grainy image, Jake could see it was wrong. Too clean, too expensive for the neighborhood. Positioned for optimal observation. How long has it been there? Since we arrived in Prague. Could be coincidence, but there are no coincidences in this business. Jake's mind raced through tactical options. If they were being followed, it meant someone knew they were looking for Valkyrie, which meant either Sentinel had better intelligence than they thought, or Valkyrie herself was watching to see who came looking. Martinez voiced what they were all thinking. Could be her. Could be bait to see if we're worth trusting. Or it could be the people who try to kill her setting another trap. Jake made a decision. We split up. Chun, you're our tech specialist. You approach the cafe from the south, like a tourist who took a wrong turn. Get eyes on that building. See if there's any indication someone's been there recently. Martinez and I will handle the van. If it's hostile surveillance, we need to know now. They separated in the gray morning light. 3 operators moving through Prague with a practiced efficiency of men who'd learned urban warfare in Fallujah and Kandahar. Jake and Martinez took a circuitous route, using shop windows and reflective surfaces to monitor their surroundings. The van came into view after 10 minutes of careful approach, a Mercedes Sprinter with tinted windows and Prague commercial plates. Government issue, Martinez murmured, or someone trying to look like government. They circled the block, noting sight lines and escape routes. Professional habit, ingrained by years of operations in hostile territory. When they returned to their starting position, Jake noticed something that made his pulse quicken. Fresh scratches on the van's rear door lock, the kind left by someone picking it recently. Someone beat us here, he said quietly. Valkyrie, maybe, or another player we don't know about. Jake pulled out his phone and sent an encrypted message to Chun. Approach with caution. Multiple interested parties. The response came back immediately. Copy. I'm at the cafe now. You need to see this. They found Chun in an alley behind the abandoned building, his face pale in the weak morning light. The back door was forced. Recent, Maybe last night. And there are signs of a search. Whoever did it was professional but rushed. Jake examined the door. Chen was right. The jimming was expert, but there were stress marks suggesting urgency. Show me. Inside, the cafe was a tomb of abandoned furniture and faded memories. Dust covered everything except for clear disturbance patterns where someone had moved through recently. Overturned chairs, displaced tables, paper scattered across the floor. In what had once been the office, they found the real evidence. A wall panel pulled away to reveal a hidden compartment. Empty. Dead drop. Martinez said immediately, classic tradecraft. She left something here, and someone else retrieved it. Or someone found it first. Jake examined the compartment carefully. It was sophisticated work. The panel fit seamlessly when closed, the hinges hid behind what appeared to be structural elements. Valkyrie built this. I'd bet my life on it. The question is, did she come back for whatever she left, or did someone else find it? Chen was photographing everything, his camera capturing angles and details. There's something else. Look at the floor. Scuff marks led from the hidden compartment to the window. Fresh marks, made within the last 24 hours. And on the windowsill, barely visible in the dust, was a symbol. A small bird with outstretched wings, drawn with a fingertip. The same symbol Blackwood had shown them from Syria. She was here, Jake breathed, recently, and she knew someone would come looking. But why leave a calling card? Martinez asked. If she wanted to stay hidden, why mark her passage? Because she wants us to know she's alive. Or, Jake's thoughts crystallized, because she wants someone specific to know. Someone she's trying to communicate with. They spent the next hour searching the cafe systematically, but found nothing else. Whatever Valkyrie had left in the dead drop was gone, taken by someone who knew exactly where to look. As they prepared to leave, Chen's phone buzzed with an alert. The van's moving, heading southeast toward the river. Jake made an instant decision. We follow. If they know about this location, they might know about others. And if Valkyrie's still in Prague, that van might lead us to her. The pursuit was a delicate dance through Prague's narrow streets, maintaining visual contact without revealing their presence. The van moved with purpose, its route planned and efficient. After 20 minutes, it pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a modern office building in the Smichev district. That's interesting, Chen murmured, checking his database. That building houses several tech companies and cybersecurity firms. Also 3 organizations with suspected intelligence connections. They watched from a cafe across the street as 2 men exited the van and entered the building. Both moved with military bearing, their awareness of their surroundings marking them as professionals. Jake captured their faces with his phone's camera and sent them to Davis back in the States for analysis. The response came back 15 minutes later. 1 match. Pavel Novak, former Czech military intelligence, now works as a private contractor, associated with several gray market security firms. Mercenaries, Martinez said. Someone hired them to search that cafe, which means someone knows Valkyrie was here and wants what she left behind. Jake watched the building, his mind working through implications. The question is, are they working for Sentinel or against it? His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You're asking the wrong questions. Meet me at Petrin Tower, observation deck, 2,200 hours. Come alone. V. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. He showed the message to Martinez and Chun, watching their expressions mirror his own mix of excitement and caution. It could be a trap, Chen said carefully. It could be, Jake agreed. But if there's even a chance it's really her, I have to take it. Not alone, Martinez insisted. We go together or not at all. She said alone. If we spook her, she disappears and we've lost our only chance. Jake checked his watch. They had 12 hours until the meet. You 2 maintain surveillance on that building. See if our mercenary friends lead us anywhere else. I'll handle Petrin. They argued, but Jake was immovable. He'd waited 6 years for confirmation that Sarah Chun was alive. He'd come to Prague chasing ghosts and whispers. Now, finally, there was a chance to end the uncertainty. Even if it was a trap, even if it cost him everything. He had to know. The day crawled past with agonizing slowness. Jake tried to rest, knowing he'd need all his faculties sharp for the meeting, but sleep was impossible. His mind kept replaying the last time he'd heard her voice, calm and certain as their world exploded around them. Had she changed in 6 years? What had survival in the shadows done to the woman who'd once been their rock, their compass, their reason they'd all come home alive? At 2,145 hours, Jake began his approach to Petrin Tower. The park was dark and nearly empty, the observation tower rising like a skeletal finger pointing at the sky. He took the funicular railway up the hill, watching for surveillance, noting exits and escape routes out of habit. The city spread below him, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. The observation deck was deserted. Jake positioned himself with his back to a wall, where he could see anyone approaching. He carried no weapons. Bringing them across international borders would have been too risky, but his hands and training were weapons enough if this went wrong. At precisely 2,200 hours, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the deck. She moved like water, silent and fluid, staying in the darkness where the tower's lights didn't reach. But even without seeing her face clearly, Jake knew. He'd know that movement anywhere. The economy of motion that came from years of operating in hostile territory, where every unnecessary gesture could mean death. "Hello, Reaper." Her voice was exactly as he remembered, calm, controlled, with an undertone of steel. "You've gotten better at tradecraft. 6 years ago, I could have walked up and tapped you on the shoulder." Jake's throat was tight. "Valkyrie." She stepped into the light, and Jake felt his breath catch. Sarah Chin looked different and exactly the same. Shorter hair, dyed dark. Leaner, harder, carrying the weight of 6 years alone. But her eyes, those dark, analytical eyes that had seen through enemy deception and friendly lies alike, those were unchanged. "That call sign died in Afghanistan," she said quietly, "just like I was supposed to." They stood facing each other across 10 feet of observation deck, two ghosts meeting in the darkness. Jake wanted to rush forward, to confirm she was real, but he forced himself to stillness. "We never believed you were gone. All of us. Everyone you saved. We got tattoos. We've been looking." Sarah's expression flickered, something that might have been emotion breaking through tactical control. "You shouldn't have. You've painted targets on yourselves. We know about Sentinel. We know what happened during Phantom Shield. And we know you've been protecting teams ever since." Jake took one careful step forward. "Sarah, let us help. You don't have to do this alone anymore." "Yes, I do." Her voice was flat, final. "Sentinel isn't just a corrupt program, Jake. It's a symptom. Someone inside our command structure has been selling operations to the highest bidder for at least 7 years. Intelligence compromises, failed missions casualties. It's all deliberate. They package up special operations teams and offer them to our enemies like sacrificial lambs." The words hit Jake like physical blows. "Who? Who's behind it?" "I don't have names yet. Just evidence. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, operational timelines that match too perfectly with enemy responses. But I'm close. One more operation, and I'll have enough to expose the entire network." Sarah's jaw tightened, "Which is why you need to stop looking for me. Every investigation you conduct, every question you ask, it gives them warning. It puts you in danger. We can handle danger. Your targets." Sarah's composure cracked, revealing the exhaustion and isolation beneath. "Do you have any idea how many times I've had to intervene in the past 6 years? How many operations I've had to monitor? How many threats I've neutralized before they reached you? Sentinel doesn't just want me dead. They want everyone who might figure out what they've done dead, too." Jake closed the remaining distance between them, stopping only when he could see the slight tremor in Sarah's hands. "Then we stand together. Martinez, Davis, Chun, the others, we're all in this. We have resources you don't. We can move in official channels while you work the shadows. We can protect each other. Like we protected each other in Kandahar." The bitterness in her voice was corrosive. "I saw it coming, Jake. 2 weeks before Phantom Shield, I saw the intelligence reports and knew they were fake. And when I reported it, I was threatened with court-martial. So I went anyway, positioned myself to save everyone despite the compromised intel. And afterward, they tried to erase me along with the evidence. Jesus, Sarah. The bunker busters weren't meant to kill the enemy. They were meant to kill me. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. I survived because I found an old escape tunnel the enemy had dug. Spent 3 days underground. No food, no water. When I emerged, I intercepted a Sentinel communication confirming my death. That's when I realized I was more useful as a ghost. They stood in silence, the city lights below casting their faces in alternating shadow and illumination. Finally, Jake spoke. What do you need? What can we do to help you finish this? Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a small drive. This contains everything I've gathered. It's incomplete, but enough to start an investigation if something happens to me. Give it to Commander Patterson. He's one of the few people I trust. Jake took the drive, feeling its weight in his palm. And what are you going to do? There's an operation next week. SEAL Team 6, hostage rescue in Yemen. The intelligence looks perfect, which means it's probably a trap. I'll be there to make sure they survive. And while I'm there, I'm going to trace the leak back to its source. Sarah met his eyes. If I succeed, this ends. If I don't, that drive is the only evidence. Then I'm coming with you. No. Yes. Jake's voice was steel. You taught me everything about intelligence work. You saved my life more times than I can count. Now it's my turn. You can try to stop me, but we both know I'll just follow you anyway. Sarah studied him for a long moment, and Jake saw her calculating, weighing, analyzing. One condition. We do this my way. My protocols, my security measures, my decisions. You follow my lead without question. Agreed. And if I give the order to abort, you abort. No heroics, no last stands. Her expression was iron. You get out and get that drive to Patterson. Jake wanted to argue, but recognized the tactical necessity. Agreed. Sarah nodded once, then turned toward the darkness. There's a cargo ship leaving Hamburg in 60 hours. The MV Poseidon. Be in Hamburg in 58 hours. Come alone. Tell no one where you're going. Sarah. Jake's voice stopped her. Thank you for everything you've done. For all of us. She didn't turn back, but her voice carried clearly through the night air. Don't thank me yet, Reaper. This isn't over. Then she was gone, dissolving into shadows with the same uncanny skill that kept her alive and hidden for 6 years. Jake stood alone on the observation deck, the data drive solid in his pocket, the weight of what he'd learned pressing down on his shoulders. Below, Prague glittered in the darkness, unaware that somewhere in its ancient streets, a war was being fought. A war between those who protected and those who betrayed, between duty and corruption, between warriors who served in silence and the shadows that sought to consume them. Jake pulled out his phone and sent an encrypted message to Martinez. Found her. Going dark. Trust Patterson. The package is in play. Then he destroyed the SIM card and began the long walk back down Petrin Hill, toward Hamburg, toward Yemen, toward whatever final confrontation awaited them in the desert. The hunt for Valkyrie was over. The war to save her had just begun. The Red Sea stretched before them like hammered bronze, the setting sun turning the water into liquid metal. Jake Morrison crouched in the shadow of a cargo container aboard the MV Poseidon, watching Sarah Chun prepare their equipment with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times alone. They were 12 hours from Yemen, 12 hours from either vindication or annihilation. Sarah worked in silence, her movements economical and practiced. She transformed the cargo ship's lower hold into a tactical operations center, satellite uplinks, communications arrays, weapons, and intelligence equipment that must have cost a fortune to acquire without official channels. Jake was beginning to understand the scope of her 6-year war, the resources she'd accumulated, the network she built entirely in the shadows. The mission brief says SEAL Team 6 is targeting a compound 30 kilometers northwest of Aden. Sarah said, without looking up from her laptop. The hostage is supposedly a State Department official captured 3 weeks ago by an Al-Qaeda affiliate. The intelligence package is pristine. Satellite imagery, human intelligence confirmation, communications intercepts, everything perfectly aligned. Which means it's a trap, Jake finished. Every operation Sentinel has touched follows the same pattern. Perfect intelligence that leads our people into prepared kill zones. Sarah pulled up a series of documents, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I've been tracking their methodology for 6 years. They use legitimate intelligence as a foundation, then add subtle corruptions, wrong building layouts, inaccurate guard rotations, escape routes that don't exist. Small changes that seem like minor errors but are calculated to create maximum casualties. Jake studied the mission brief, his combat experience identifying the inconsistencies Sarah was pointing out. The compound secondary exit is listed here, but the satellite imagery shows it was sealed with concrete 3 months ago. Exactly. Team 6 goes in, takes the bait, and suddenly they're trapped with no exit and enemy reinforcements arriving. It's the same playbook as Kandahar, just a different theater. Sarah's voice was tight with controlled anger. And somewhere, someone is getting paid to orchestrate these massacres. You said you're close to identifying them. What do you have? Sarah pulled up a new screen, this one showing a complex web of financial transactions and communications intercepts. Sentinel operations are authorized through a classified oversight committee. 5 members, all senior Pentagon officials. For the past 2 years, I've been tracking their financial records, offshore accounts, shell companies, cryptocurrency transfers. 4 of them are clean, but one, she highlighted a name, shows patterns that match too perfectly with operation compromises. Jake read the name and felt his world tilt. Deputy Director Carlson. He was my commanding officer before I joined the teams. He's also the one who authorized the bunker strikes on Kandahar, and he's been present at the operational planning for every Sentinel mission that's gone wrong. Sarah met Jake's eyes. Tomorrow, he'll be monitoring the Yemen operation from CENTCOM headquarters in Qatar, and I'm going to prove he's a leak. How? By letting Team 6 walk into the trap, then documenting exactly how the enemy knows their every move. I'll have communications intercepts, timeline correlations, everything needed to connect Carlson to the compromise. But her voice hardened. I need be in position to intervene when it goes wrong, which means we need to be in Yemen before the operation starts. Jake checked his watch. The team inserts at 0300 local time. We got 18 hours. 17, accounting for transit from our position to the target. The Poseidon will drop us 30 nautical miles off the coast. From there, we take an inflatable to shore and move over land. Sarah pulled up detailed topographical maps. I've identified 3 positions that give us optimal overwatch of the compound. We'll have communications intercepts, sniper support, and backup extraction routes ready when everything falls apart. Just the 2 of us against God knows how many hostiles. Just the 2 of us, like it's been for 6 years. Sarah finally looked at him directly, and Jake saw the weight she'd been carrying. The isolation, the impossible odds, the knowledge that one mistake would mean not just her death, but the deaths of everyone she was trying to protect. Jake, you can still walk away. Get off this ship at the next port. Deliver the drive to Patterson. Let someone else handle this. You don't owe me your life. Yes, I do. 7 times over by my count. Jake moved to the equipment Sarah had laid out. Besides, I didn't come this far to turn back now. You've been alone long enough. Time to remember what it's like to have backup. Something shifted in Sarah's expression, a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. I'm not the person you remember. 6 years in the shadows changes you. I've done things that would end my career if they ever came to light. I've bent every rule, broken every protocol, operated completely outside the chain of command. To save lives. To stop a traitor who was getting our people killed. That's not breaking protocol, Sarah. That's being a warrior when nobody else would. They worked through the night, finalizing plans and contingencies. Sarah shared intelligence she'd gathered over 6 years. Enemy force deployments, local tribal alliances, weather patterns, everything that might affect the mission. Jake contributed his own combat experience. Identifying tactical opportunities, Sarah might have missed operating solo for so long. It was like falling back into the old rhythm they'd had in Afghanistan, when her analytical mind and his operational instinct had made them an unbeatable team. As dawn broke over the Red Sea, the MV Poseidon altered course for the Yemeni coast. Jake and Sarah prepared their gear, weapons, communications equipment, surveillance devices, medical supplies, everything they'd need to keep SEAL Team 6 alive, while simultaneously gathering evidence against the traitor. One thing I don't understand, Jake said as they loaded the inflatable. If you've been tracking Carlson for 2 years, why not go to Patterson earlier? Why wait until now? Because Carlson isn't acting alone. There's someone higher up the chain protecting him. Someone with enough influence to bury investigations and eliminate witnesses. I needed ironclad proof before making accusations, or I'd just end up dead and Carlson would continue operating. Sarah secured the last equipment case. But tomorrow, when Team 6 walks into that trap, and I document exactly how the enemy knew they were coming, we'll have evidence that can't be ignored or buried. They launched the inflatable after dark, the small boat cutting through black water toward a hostile shore. Yemen's coastline appeared as a darker shadow against the night sky. They made landfall 20 kilometers south of Aden, pulling the inflatable into a hidden cove and covering it with camouflage netting, then began the overland trek to the target compound. Moving through Yemen's desert terrain reminded Jake of Afghanistan. The same harsh beauty, the same sense of ancient conflicts layered beneath modern wars. Sarah navigated with the confidence of someone who'd scouted this route before, leading them through wadis and around populated areas, always staying invisible, always maintaining operational security. They reached the Overwatch position with 4 hours to spare before Team 6 insertion. The compound spread below them, exactly as the intelligence brief had described it. But Jake could see what Sarah meant about subtle corruptions. The blocked exit, the defensive positions that hadn't been mentioned in the brief, the sight lines that would turn the compound into a killing field. Sarah set up their equipment with practiced efficiency. Communications intercepts to monitor both SEAL Team 6 and enemy frequencies. Sniper rifles positioned to provide covering fire. Backup extraction routes mapped and marked. By the time the sun began its descent toward evening, they were ready. Team 6 is inbound, Sarah reported, monitoring encrypted channels. They're following the mission plan, exactly, which means in about 30 minutes, they're going to realize they've been set up. Jake watched through a scope as the SEAL team moved into position. 8 operators, the best of the best, approaching a compound that had been turned into a death trap. His finger rested lightly on his trigger, ready to provide support the moment things went wrong. And they did go wrong, exactly as Sarah had predicted. Team 6 breached the compound and immediately took fire from positions that weren't supposed to be occupied. The secondary exit Sarah had identified as blocked trapped half the team inside, while enemy reinforcements poured in from surrounding buildings. It was Kandahar all over again. Perfect intelligence turned into perfect ambush. They're coordinating too well, Jake observed, watching enemy movements through a scope. Someone's directing them in real time. Carlson. Sarah was frantically monitoring communications intercepts. Look at this. Encrypted transmission from Qatar to a local number, sent 30 seconds before Team 6 breached. It's the confirmation of their insertion time and entry point. She was recording everything, building the case piece by piece. But Team 6 was dying. Jake could see it happening. Operators pinned down, ammunition running low, casualties mounting. Sarah, we need to intervene. Now. Not yet. I need more proof, more intercept showing the pattern. They're going to die. Sarah's hands were shaking over her keyboard, torn between her mission and her oath to protect. Jake recognized the impossible choice she'd been making for 6 years. How many times had she watched teams walk into danger, waiting until the last possible second to act, because she needed evidence to stop the larger threat? Fuck the evidence, Jake said, making the decision for both of them. We save them first. We'll find another way to prove Carlson's guilt. Something broke in Sarah's expression. Relief, maybe, or permission to stop being a ghost and start being a warrior again. All right, follow my lead. What followed was a symphony of violence orchestrated with the precision of 2 operators who'd trained together for years. Sarah's intelligence guided Jake's shots. Enemy positions she'd identified through communications intercepts, reinforcement routes she'd mapped weeks ago. Jake's rifle spoke with mechanical precision, eliminating threats that Team 6 couldn't even see. And Sarah's voice, calm and certain, appeared on Team 6's encrypted channel. SEAL operators, this is Valkyrie. I have overwatch and egress routes. When I call your move, you move. Understood. There was a moment of confusion. Then the team leader responded. Valkyrie, you're supposed to be dead. I know, but right now I'm your only chance of getting out alive. There's a drainage tunnel 30 meters north of your position. It's not on your maps, but it's there. When I give the word, you move. Jake provided covering fire, while Sarah guided Team 6 through the compound with the same skill she'd shown in Kandahar. Every turn perfectly timed, every movement calculated to keep them out of enemy fire. It took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours, but finally all 8 operators were clear of the compound and moving toward an extraction point Sarah had prepared. Dust off inbound 3 minutes, Sarah reported. You're clear, gentlemen. Get your wounded to the bird and get out of here. The team leader's voice came back, stunned. Who are you? How did you? Doesn't matter. What matters is you're alive. Now go home to your families and forget this ever happened. She cut the transmission before they could respond, then turned to Jake with exhaustion written across her face. We need to move. Once they debrief, people will start asking questions. They abandoned their position, moving fast through the Yemeni night toward their extraction point. But Jake noticed Sarah checking her equipment, a grim satisfaction on her face. You got what you needed, he realized. The intercepts, the proof of Carlson's communication. Everything. Timestamps, content, correlation with enemy actions. Patterson will have enough to launch a full investigation. Sarah paused, looking back toward the compound where they had just saved 8 lives. But Jake, this is it. Once we surface this evidence, my life as a ghost is over. Either Carlson and his backers will be exposed and arrested, or they'll kill us both to keep it buried. Then we'd better make sure Patterson gets that evidence before they can act. Jake pulled out the data drive she'd given him in Prague. Between what you've given me and what we just recorded, it's enough. Time to end this war you've been fighting alone. They reached their extraction point, the hidden cove where they'd left the inflatable, just as dawn began to paint the eastern sky. The MV Poseidon waited offshore, ready to carry them away from Yemen and toward whatever reckoning awaited in the States. As they loaded their equipment into the boat, Sarah spoke quietly. Thank you for coming after me, for not letting me stay a ghost. That's what brothers do, Jake replied. We bring each other home. They pushed off from the shore, the inflatable cutting through calm morning water. Behind them, Yemen receded into the distance. Ahead, the Poseidon represented a return to the world, to accountability, to justice, to the end of 6 years spent in the shadows. On the ship, Jake sent an encrypted message to Martinez. Mission complete. Evidence secured. Heading home. Alert Patterson. The response came back immediately. We're ready. Welcome back, both of you. Sarah stood at the inflatable's bow, watching the sun rise over a world she protected from the darkness for 6 years. The ghost was becoming human again, the solitary warrior rejoining her team. It wouldn't be easy. There would be debriefs and investigations, questions and consequences. But she wouldn't face them alone. 12 men with the same tattoo were waiting stateside. 12 brothers who'd never stopped believing, never stopped looking, never stopped fighting to bring her home. And now, finally, the woman who'd save them all was going to let them save her. The war wasn't over. Carlson and his network would fight to protect themselves, and the battle to expose them would be fierce. But for the first time in 6 years, Saracen wasn't fighting alone. For the first time since Kandahar, Valkyrie had backup, and together, they were going to burn Sentinel to the ground and bring every traitor to justice. For all the operators who died in compromised missions, for all the families who'd lost warriors to betrayal, for every life Sarah had saved in 6 years of solitary warfare, the ghost had returned, and she brought an army with her.